Hello, friends. It's Nikki, and welcome back to my messy bookshelf. Today, I am here with a tag video, and this is the 8 book memories tag, a fun walk down memory lane from childhood to now with books. So, this tag was created by Paul at the Accidental Bookseller. I'm looking down at my iPad here, and I won't read everything that he has to say, but he does say, what are 8 books that you see on your shelf or that you remember reading where that site evokes powerful memories regarding moments in your life or key experiences? And I thought this was such an interesting concept because I have a few books like this. And so I was really excited when Sue from Sue Jackson um, tagged me in this one. So I have been waiting to make this one because I do have a few, and some of you know a couple of the ones I will mention because I mention them all the time. And because I do have a couple that I talk about all the time, I will start with those. I will start with those. Um, so I have a handful of books, well, 8 books, and they all evoke a very powerful memory or a time and place for me. So the first one I have here, probably one of my most talked about books, and that is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And I have told this story before, but when I was in middle school and on summer break, they gave us a reading list to complete over the summer, or if you read any one of the books on the list over the summer, you would get like extra credit in English class or something. And me being a reader, I was interested anyway. So I remember my mother giving me a $5 bill, and I walked to the used bookstore, and I knew nothing about any of the books on the list. And so this is the one that I chose because it was there. And that night, I walked home, and I just remember that I was supposed to be having a sleepover at a friend's house that day. And I sat down, I started to read this, and I got so sucked in to this book. It started thundering, wonderful thunderstorm, the perfect reading vibes, if you will, during summer vacation. And I remember asking my mother if she would sort of go along with me. And so I told my friend that I was grounded and I could no longer come to her sleepover. And I spent the rest of the evening and the night reading this book. And I just remember sitting in front of the fan. You know, it was hot outside and the thunderstorm. My mom was making one of my favorite dishes because I was home that day, and just falling in love with this. It was so scary to my young 13-year-old self. And I loved it. And I have since reread this book more than most other books that I have reread. And I do reread a lot of books. Still just as wonderful today, almost 30 years later. And yeah, this will always, always, always bring me back right there to sitting on my couch during a thunderstorm. My mom still with us and cooking dinner and, reading my first Agatha Christie. So it is a core memory for me. All right. The next one is one that I also talk about a lot. And this is one that if my daughter is in earshot, she normally comes running when she hears me mention it because I talk about it all the time. And that is The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. This is a book that we were assigned, well, it was a read in class book that we were all reading together in 3rd grade. Might have been 3rd or 4th grade. And I fell in love. I fell in love with this book. And yeah, it was a book that we weren't allowed to bring home. We all were given copies to read in class, but we couldn't bring them home. And I remember wanting to read ahead. And for some reason, I don't remember why, because this was not typical, my uncle picked me up from school that day. And I remember telling him that I really wanted this book, and he took me to buy it, and I was able to read the book. and then enjoy it again in class. And yeah, I didn't tell you what these are about if you have never heard me talk about them. This is about a swan named Louis, and he is born without the ability to honk. And so he learns some other methods to communicate with the people and swans around him. And it was so funny. And I have since read this book with my daughter. We both loved it, and she's always making fun of me because I talk about this book so much. But she loved it too. And then, of course, going back to this one, I'm sorry I didn't mention. This is about 10 strangers that are stuck on an island, invited by each of them thinks they were invited by someone, and they are stranded on this island, and one by one, they start to be murdered. Moving on, more nostalgia here. This book is one that I will be reading soon with my daughter. This is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. This book is the last book that my mother read to me out loud, and I can still remember her sitting on my bed reading me a chapter or two every night because I would always beg to read more. And it just takes me back to that, warm and cozy feeling of being home with my mom. And you know, since we lost her a couple of years ago, it is a very, very special memory for me. So this is one that I can't wait to read with my daughter. I was maybe a year or two older than she is when my mom read this to me, but I cannot wait to share this with my daughter. The next one is one my mom also read to me, and this is Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I keep forgetting to tell you what the books are about. This is a coming of age story about a little girl who is at that stage in her life where she's about to go through puberty, and she is sort of trying to figure out, she is a little Jewish girl, and navigating coming of age and her religion at the same time. Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is about the Ingalls family, and these books were written, these are mostly true accounts by Laura Ingalls Wilder herself. And this series starts with this book, and this is when Laura is a little girl, when they are still living in the woods of Wisconsin, and her family decides to go west because they were settling the land west. But yeah, this is a book that I have very fond memories of my mother reading to me when I was a little girl, and it takes me back again to her sitting in my room on my bed and reading this out loud to me. And I have since done the same with my daughter, although she prefers the next one, Little House on the Prairie. But yes, I have enjoyed sharing a lot of my childhood favorites with her and creating new memories. But yeah, reminds me of being home with my mother. The next one I have here, and they are not all middle grade, but this one is. The next one I have here is George's Marvelous Medicine by Roald Dahl. And this is a book that I remember, again, not my mother reading it to me, but I remember, I don't know how it works everywhere else in the world, but here in the US, sometimes you can get a refund on your taxes once a year. And I remember when my mother would get that refund, if she did, she would hand me a $20 bill, and I would get to go to the bookstore. And this is one of the books I picked up. This one, I just remember being in my room, cracking up, reading this book, and reading it again and again. This book I read so many times when I was a kid, and it just made me laugh out loud every single time. And this is about a little boy who lives with his parents and his evil grandmother on a farm. And the evil grandmother is just a very cantankerous, old, grouchy woman who sits in a chair. And George is left at home with her one day, and is told to keep an eye on Grandma and make sure she gets her medicine. And Grandma is such a old grunion of a grandma that she terrorizes poor George, and George decides that he's going to make his own medicine to cure Grandma. And it is very funny. And again, I have since introduced my daughter to this book, and she loved it. We were laughing so hard, and so I have memories of myself laughing by myself in my room reading it, and memories of laughing with my daughter with this one. And then the next one I have here is one you probably would not expect. This one is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This book, I have very, very strong memories of when and where this happened. The first time that I read this book, I was topside, outside on the top deck of the ship that I was stationed on at the time, and, on the ocean. And I was just laying out there because I had no more work to do that day. So I was just laying out there with my book, reading The War of the Worlds on the non-skid of a ship, which is the very textured material that they use to make it not slippery when you are outside and it's constantly getting wet with waves. So it's very uncomfortable. It is like the texture of a popcorn ceiling, if you know what that is, and it is on the floor. So I was laying out there reading this book and enjoying every second and forgetting that I was there. So I have very fond memories of this, and will always remember just laying out in the sun on this very uncomfortable floor reading this book on the ocean. And then the next one I have here is a book I did not read until I was an adult, and that's A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And I have since, I think, read all of her children's books. And this book takes me back to when my daughter was a newborn. I think that was the first time that I read this book. I read this book out loud to my newborn daughter when we were up in the middle of the night and I was feeding her, and I was the only one awake in the house besides her. And obviously, she has no memory of that, but I just remember holding my baby daughter and feeding her and reading her this book out loud. So, this is the first book I ever read to my daughter. And so, very nostalgic and sweet memory for me because I was awake, tired, and I was still enjoying that moment with my baby. And yeah, we have since reread it since she has gotten older, and she really enjoyed this one as well. And then the last one that I have here is the most recent memory that I have, and that is reading Project Hail Mary. Because this is the first book that I got not only my husband to read, but my son, my now adult son, to read. And so we all got to experience reading this book, loving it, and having a nice family discussion about this book. And that is not something I get very often with my husband and my son. So very, very heartwarming memory for me with Project Hail Mary. And because we all loved it, we were all gushing. And even now, we still bring up things from the book and went to see the movie together. So that was a very nice experience for me as a mother and a wife, since not both of my children are huge readers. Only one of them is. But yeah, I think that was 8 books, and these are the first 8 that I can think of, but I have other books that are just like this. But I just thought this was such a cool idea to reflect on some special memories through books. And I will tag some people below, and I hope that you enjoyed this. And I didn't talk too much, but I thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.